Hello, my name is Ruth Nelson, and welcome to this week's Master Coaches Wednesday Weekly Buzz and our after show, Buzz Reaction, both hosted by John Foreman. Our most recent guests, John Cook, head coach Nebraska, and Joe Segula, head coach North Carolina, discussed one of the hottest topics, NIL, name, image, likeness. Can you imagine coaches needing a timeout during practice so their players could check their phone to see if their bank account showed their monthly endorsement fee? Wow. To listen to this, go to our show to the Instagram account and click on our bio and click on Master Coaches YouTube channel. Our newsflash, follow on Facebook NCAA 1906 with Andy Katz, who has a social series discussion that affects all levels of collegiate athletes and coaches. Many D2 schools this fall are practicing, scrimmaging, and or playing a modified conference schedule. To receive high school updates, go to nfashs.org. And for the latest discussion of how clubs and high school coaches are working together, go to jvavolleyball.org. Check out coachesinsider.com for info on COVID protocol and how it has affected high school postseason play. For the most recent updates on the conferences playing this fall, head over to our Instagram account, click on our bio, and listen to Mick and Lee. Now, did you know Brian Gimalero, AVCA Hall of Fame, lives in Long Beach, California, and his last stop was at Long Beach State? Bob Bertucci, Springfield College Hall of Fame, presently head men's coach at Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut. And Mick Haley, AVCA Hall of Fame, lives in Austin, Texas, and his last stop was USC. All will be asking our guests how COVID has affected their training schedule and what effect it has had on their program and recruiting by not playing a competition schedule this fall. First, let's head over to Austin, Texas, where former Olympic coach Mick Haley will introduce our guest today. Mick?
Well, and did you know Ruth Nelson, AVCA Hall of Fame personality on our show, also lives in Dallas, Texas, and her last coaching position was at the University of Iowa. So not to leave you out, Ruth, you don't like to talk about yourself. We'll talk about you a little bit. Today, we have three premier collegiate coaches with us. Pretty exciting. Hugh McCutcheon, head coach, University of Minnesota, representing the Big Ten. Heather Olmstead, head coach, BYU, representing the WCC, which is the West Coast Conference. Dave Rubio, head coach at University of Arizona, representing the Pac-12. Welcome, coaches, and thanks for being with us today. None of these conferences are playing this fall, and we're trying to understand how this is all going to play out. So, coaches, we're going to jump right into this. First question with you. The ACC, the SEC, the Big 12, and Sun Belt Conference all decided to play this fall. At least one Big 12 coach has indicated on our show, incidentally, that he's not even sure that there will be an indoor NC2A Division I championship this spring. Hugh, what have you been told about the spring championships, and why hasn't the NC2A committed to a site for a spring championship?
Well, yeah, thanks for having us. I've heard that there will be one. I think the little delay in terms of confirming a site is obviously the world's a little bit different, and they're just probably, dotting I's and crossing T's and making sure everything's good to go. But from what I can gather, the intention is to have something in Omaha, as the original site was supposed to be in this December. I think they're trying to keep it there, and I think they'll probably announce something here soon. What soon means exactly, I'm not sure, but I don't think it's months away. I think in the next weeks we'll know more. But from what I can gather from the NCAA, the intention absolutely is to have it. April 23rd through 25th would be the dates for that.
Okay, and Heather Olmstead, have you heard anything different?
No, I've heard the same as Hugh, and we're planning on there being spring championship. We're planning on starting our season in January. But of course, like Hugh mentioned, there's just a lot of unknowns. We don't even have a conference schedule yet, but all we can do is plan to move forward with practices, getting our team better, and giving them that carrot to dangle that there will be a championship, that there'll be a tournament, and keep moving forward. So I'm hearing the same thing as you.
Dave, any rumor that they're coming to Tucson instead of Omaha?
No, I wish that were the case. It'd be a little bit warmer, I think, but not much more on my end either. I think that we're all planning on conducting the championships and going through the season starting in January 22nd and keeping our fingers crossed that happens.
All right, let's go to question 2. This is a little bit tougher, so we'll throw this one at Heather. All of the coaches, all of you are guests on our program, and all of you have football teams from your school who are playing football, but yet we're not playing volleyball. What's the reason, in your opinion, and is this good or is this bad that we're not playing?
So for our conference personally, I can speak to that. When the conferences dropped below the 50% and the championship moved to April, we moved and postponed to a winter schedule. If we had tried to play, September 24th was the date we were shooting for. We didn't have teams, and we have a majority of our teams in California in the West Coast Conference. They weren't on campus and they weren't training. So there really was no way we could start playing September 24th, such as, the Big 12 and SEC and some of those teams, even in October. I think up until a couple weeks ago, some teams weren't even playing 6-on-6. So based off of regionally where some of our teams are located in our conference, there really was no way for us to probably play this fall and probably not even play, a shortened season either. So for us personally, that's pretty much what it came down to. And we're still unsure about January.
So Dave, you have a little bit of the California problem, yet your football team's playing. So what about you guys not playing in the Pac-12? And is this a good thing or a bad thing, or how do you read it?
Well, I don't really necessarily read on either way, good or bad. I think it's just the reality of what the situation is called for. And I think it was the right call for us. At football, given the opportunity to not play without the financial ramifications, they wouldn't play. The money is a big deal. I think the TV money is a big deal. Every conference and every school is going to be suffering from the bottom line here from a financial standpoint. And so I think it's the right call for us on the West. The California schools have been really affected severely on this. Cal hasn't even stepped in the gym yet. So we'll see. Hopefully, like Heather said, that we'll have the season starting in January.
The Big Ten's a little bit different, though, isn't it? You guys haven't been shut down anywhere. You just had a conference decision. So are you guys behind now because you're not playing?
Yeah, I'd agree with Dave. I don't think it's good or bad. It just is what it is. It's a thing. And I would say that similar to the PAC, the motive for canceling was absolutely in the best interest of student athletes. Once the antigen testing became a viable possibility for being able to manage the virus, then I think the financial realities of athletic departments, without football versus athletic departments with football became a driving factor. So for us, getting pushed, given our championships pushed to the spring, it's okay to start in January, and we'll have more information. We'll have hopefully better testing and maybe have a better handle on this thing. Who knows?
All right, Bob, take it away.
Well, I think Hugh just touched on part of my question. I'll start with Dave, though. Dave, it's great to see you again. My question has to do with the testing. How often, it's so important at the schools right now, whether you're practicing or playing. How often are you testing? And what are you hearing is the cost for the testing that you're doing right now?
Well, the testing has been an ongoing, there's been a lot of questions surrounding testing here anyway. And we were just given the green light 2 weeks ago to start antigen testing 4 days a week. And so they've given us the opportunity to start playing full contact at least 3 days a week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, limited practice time the other week. So, we've been fortunate enough that one of the few schools in the country that actually allowed to go full after the testing. Not sure exactly how much the testing costs. I think it's more of the fact that it's not so much about the cost, but just the number of tests that's available. With basketball and football taking up majority of the tests, I think it's just not as many tests for the other sports. And so we were fortunate enough where we're actually able to, use the test to be able to start playing full contact.
Hugh, you mentioned antigen testing. Is that what you guys are using at Minnesota?
We will. Currently, we're doing the PCR nasal swab, and the antigen stuff is the saliva test that I think is not quite as whatever effective or whatever. I don't know. The strike rate isn't quite as high, but it's much cheaper. But on the flip side of that, you're doing it daily, so. The costs are real. There's no doubt. I think, the PCR test is over $100 a pop for everybody. I think the antigen thing was closer to $10 or something. I don't know. These are very general figures, I think, but somewhere in those kind of ballparks. So, in addition to all the different revenue streams that the institutions are not getting, the cost of doing business has gone up as well.
The antigen test, I just heard that it was around $45, $50, and my team's going to have to do it 3 times a week as just to meet the minimum recommendation from the NCAA. I started putting some numbers together. We're going to spend $100,000 on men's volleyball. That's more than my budget is for 3 years. All right. Just on testing this year. So Heather, do you think that's going to affect some of the mid-majors and are they going to be able to play volleyball when they start actually looking at the cost of this testing?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a challenge. I know we're, Bob, we heard the same thing. We're doing the saliva test. It's about $40 a test. And we're testing 25% of our student athletes when you're not in season. So we're doing the minimum for the NCAA requirement, random testing, and we'll go to the requirements when we start playing 3 times a week. I think it's a huge challenge for departments, not only to come, BYU's telling us every sport but football will be playing in January, every sport. And so we're going from 0 to 100 besides football, which is a great thing for our student athletes if we can pull it off. But yeah, if you start multiplying, a track team, a swim team, basketball, it's pretty costly. I think it's a huge challenge. I think maybe the hopes were that some of this would get settled by January by postponing, and that some of the testing, with the vaccine and some things would be further along. I think obviously October 28th, and we're still unsure about January, is a little concerning.
Well, changing gears a little bit, away from the COVID thing for a minute, Mick had mentioned about the NIL. So Hugh, what's your school position on the NIL and that legislation, and what do you think your program is going to be doing?
Well, it's coming. So I think you've got to be ready for it, or at least try to be prepared in some way to figure out, as an institution within your area, within your demographic, how you can try to make it work. There's I think there's some really serious implications and ramifications relative to how we want to portray student athletes, especially female student athletes. I think there are all kinds of things that we got to consider in all of this, but at least at first glance, it's not how you feel about it. This is going to be a thing. So let's figure out a strategy, and one that is in keeping with the values of our program and the institution, the athletic department, and then try to build something out from there.
Heather, have they said anything definitive at BYU yet about how they're going to handle it?
Yeah, we've signed with a company called Open Doors. So we have a contract. We're moving forward with it. Our student athletes are meeting and getting evaluations on their personal brand. So I agree with you. It's coming, whether we like it or not, what our personal opinion is on it or not. So we want to help our student athletes maximize the value of their personal brand, whatever that looks like to them. Some kids are going to care about it. Some kids aren't. Some kids are going to get, to take advantage of it. Some kids aren't. And I think that Hugh touched on it. It's going to change the landscape. It's going to be very interesting how that plays out. I don't know that anyone quite understands yet. And we could be having a very different conversation, in 5 years or so about it.
Dave, how about Arizona? What are they doing? What's their position right now?
Well, actually, they just came out with, our athletic director came out with a statement yesterday about parameters that we're going to be using with the student athletes and setting up meetings with them. And like Heather said, discuss personal brand, financial implications. I think overall, my prediction is that it's not going to really affect women's volleyball, with the exception of maybe a handful of programs. And I think there's a larger, with basketball and football, I think there's going to be, it's going to be interesting to kind of see what road this takes us down. Is it the beginning of the end, of athletics as we know it? I don't know. I mean, it's going to be hard enough for us to do our job, and it gets harder every single year. I think with the passage of this new legislation, it makes it even that much more difficult for the major sports. So, we'll see. I don't necessarily look at it as a good thing for us, but I think the big question for me is that once they're going to go down this road, then are we going to start taxing them on their scholarships? They become employees, and so if the student athletes want to start dealing with real life issues that we all have to deal with once we finish with school, once they start making that kind of money, end up making any kind of money, then there are tax implications, and does that spill over into other areas of scholarship, in terms of gear and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it surely could be a can of worms, I think. There's no doubt about it.
It's certainly.
Brian, you have a couple of questions?
Yeah, I'm sitting here trying to figure out how coaches can get a percentage of the money coming in for the players. I'm just trying to figure that out. So I think that should be part of the deal with the NIL. It's nice to see all three of you great, successful coaches. As a coach, as a former coach, although this year I think it's a good year to be retired, I'm looking at schedule, and I'm thinking about the 132 days of practice time and the fairness of this. I know some schools started early. They're all asking for exemptions from the NCAA as part of that time for their 132 opportunities, practice opportunities. How are you guys feeling, and when do you start, and how are you managing all of this? Hugh, can we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, we're in a space where the 132 is the guideline, or the rule, and the whatever exemptions people are asking for from our compliance. We've been told that a few days here or there might be entertained, but the idea that teams that have been getting an extra month of practice or something, it's probably not going to fly. We had some preseason that we got into before our season was canceled. So we have plenty of days, and we've planned out for 132. So that's where we're at. But I think, there's some flexibility built in there, but it seems, at least from what I can gather, that the ability to leverage that to a strong competitive advantage isn't there.
Well, Dave, when do you start? When are you going to start as a part of your 132, or have you?
Well, we had some days in the preseason that count. So we got reported, I think, August 7th or 8th or something around there. Our schedule was changed. Our season was canceled or shifted or whatever it was on the 11th. But we were already going, and we were in a bubble, and so it made very little sense to just stop. We had a chance to maybe make up a little bit for our spring, actually, because we lost our 6 weeks of 20 hours in the spring. So we got 3 weeks in there. Then our athletes went home, saw their families, came back for the beginning of school. We've been in 8 hours ever since. We're going to jump back into 20 here soon, and then try to get a few weeks. And then, starting sometime around the beginning of January, try to get ready for a January 22nd kickoff, which is the first date of competition for this spring championship season.
And Dave, how about you in the Pac-12?
Well, it's been interesting. It's been a little bit different because, we're so used to playing in the fall and then counting the spring, and it's been a lot easier just to calculate because of the normal structure that it's been. So now that we started in the fall, and our constant regular question we had to compliance is, what's the calendar going to look like? What is the NCAA going to do for the 132 days? And because we were in the 20-hour week from the very start of season, our start of the school year, which was August 24th. And so we went for 4 weeks of 20 hours. And had I known that they were going to count those, because we were led to believe that they weren't going to count those. And so then we started counting back. And so I immediately went into 8 hours after that. And now we're back into 20 hours. So there's a little bit of latitude there. I think the NCAA is going to allow us in terms of capturing some of those days in the beginning of the year. We were able to capture 5 days. So that extended our 20 hours a week by 5 days. Not a lot, but they're better than. But, the season's shorter for us, and that's the other bit. Is, normally we're about 108 days during the regular season. Now we're at like 90. So it's a little bit different. And, we're all making adjustments and understanding we have to make adjustments just because of what's happening.
And Heather, we're with this. I want to throw something out about scheduling. Now instead of 64 teams, there's going to be 48. And with 48 teams, how do you schedule in the spring to be able to, get a spot, either winning the conference or at large, especially the at large, and how are you scheduling to be able to be seated properly when the tournament starts?
Yeah, great question. I hope I'm not missing the boat here, but not one person has sent me a scheduling email, so they're not coming across my desk or my email. I don't hear about teams scheduling. Nobody, at least in our area, are sure if they can play non-conference, if their conference is going to stay with conference. So I don't see a lot of scheduling happening. Maybe nobody wants to play, but I mean, it's just so hard to know. We're starting January 22nd. If our conference starts that weekend or the next weekend, there's not really any built-in time if you're going 10 weeks. If you want to take a week off in our winter season for makeup games, are you going to leave a week at the end of your season for makeup games and conference? Are you going to leave a week in the middle to makeup games? How is that going to look? Are you playing double round robin? All those things for us are still not answered. So scheduling non-conference, probably not a top priority right now. And that does make it difficult because there are going to be some at-large bids, 16, depending on if all 32 conferences play. There could be more. And I think that's very challenging with the Big 12 having the opportunity probably to schedule non-conference as much as they want, whoever they can find play if they have those dates available. I don't know that people are super concerned about fairness. We're glad to be playing. That's the way we're looking at it. And in regards to practices, Brian, at least for us, we're not too concerned about practices. We're finding it difficult to really push and grind right now with no carrot really there for those girls. So the practice 132, we're doing the best. We're doing similar to Hugh and Dave. It's challenging without competitions, without some sort of motivation, without certainty, obviously all the unknown. It's super challenging. So giving them breaks and being able to go in and out of the 20 hours in the 8 weeks, I think is the best that we can do just to keep those kids fresh and healthy and motivated and positive and looking forward to something hopefully in January.
The reason they don't call you back for scheduling is because you've gotten so good, Heather. When you're that good,
Wow.
nobody calls anybody back if you're good. So, and I think Dave and Hugh have seen the same thing. And anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Ruth.
Okay, I love this. I get at least a couple minutes, if you guys have seen some of our shows before, to answer recruiting and ideas about what you're doing about.
There we go again.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Dave, I'm going to hit you up first. There's at least 10 to 15 fall showcases, combines, or ID talent events. What are the advantages or disadvantages? And then I'm going to go to Hugh and also Heather.
Well, I think the advantage is just try to, everything we're living in a virtual world now, and that's a different deal for everybody. So the advantage is try to get seen, in trying to see kids in the 22, 23, 24 class or however young you want to go. So So I think that's it. And the disadvantage is it's hard to trust what you see.
Yeah.
You know, the other part of it,
Okay.
the film is only going to be so you really want to see the kids in person.
All right, Hugh, how about you?
Yeah, that seems about right. It's good. It's good to have a look at the kid, but at some point you want to eyeball them. I think it'd be good to see him in person, and hopefully, there's an opportunity to get that done at some point soon.
Okay, so I'm not going to send you my 2034 tapes, okay? I'll wait on those. All right, Heather, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's great to get a gauge on where kids are, maybe find some new kids you haven't been able to see because we weren't able to go out recruiting and see where they're at, in another year and see their development. So I think it's good for the student athletes to be able to get out and play, and we're doing the best we can virtually, and hopefully, we're getting really good at recruiting off YouTube.
All right, that's good. All right, the last question, and if you could be brief because we're running short on time. Mental health, is the support system at each of your institutions being able to support your athletes? And maybe I should say you also. Let's go to you first.
Oh, go ahead, Hugh.
Yeah, briefly, it's really strong. It's a good program, and I think it's adding a ton of value.
All right, excellent. Heather, how about you? And is it 3 staff, 4 staff, or just you and a couple people?
So our mental, we have counselors on campus and in the athletic department that are there for our kids and for us as coaches. So I think the support is there. The kids, are vocal about wanting to talk, and I think it's a good thing that we're talking about mental health.
Excellent. How about Dave? How about you?
The same thing, and I think it's been a priority for every institution now to provide services for the kids. And I think that during the particular pandemic, having them the opportunity to get out of the gym and actually practice has been good for everyone, including the coaches.
Okay. That's wonderful. Okay, now I'm going to go to Mick, but we want to thank all 3 of you. And we always say that, once we get marketing, you don't have to listen to us because we know you all have to go to practice. So Mick is going to close out and talk about next week's show.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank
you,
all
guys.
3 of you.
Thank
Thanks
you, guys.
Thank you.
for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Right.
Cheers.
Good luck. Good luck this season.
So next week, we've got kind of an exciting show. We're going to follow Ruth on this mental health, wellness stuff a little bit more. We've got a first-year coach from the Sun Belt coming on, Sean Hewitt from Texas State, who really is talking about dealing with first-year coaching as well as the pandemic, as well as all of these things. And maybe the wellness program needs to be more for him, the young coach, than it does for the players at this point, but we'll find that out a little bit. And to go along with Sean, Nicole Davis, a 2-time Olympian, is coming on, and she's been doing a lot of work in coaching players on wellness, on mindset, and she will be on to kind of do some back and forth with Sean about what he's doing. And we want to follow up on what we've heard. We've heard that almost 60% of the athletes out there are in some kind of counseling across the country, not just this year, but a continuation from the last several years. So the shows will take a little bit different turn, I think, but we're all pretty excited to get into this and find out what these folks are really thinking. So it should be exciting. Ruth, back to you.
Okay, fall virtual clinics are now available for you, your team, or coaches. Please head over to our Instagram account, click on a bio, and click on the virtual clinic link, or you may scan our QR code that will take you directly to all of our information. A special shout out to our partners, SNA Sports and Baden Sports. Our weekly Buzz shows are on YouTube, and you can access these by going directly to our Instagram account, click on the bio, and enjoy listening to leaders like Hugh, Dave, Heather, address current issues and trends. Follow us on Facebook, Volleyball Master Coaches, Instagram or Twitter, VB Master Coaches. You only have 9 days left to register for the 2020 AVCA Virtual Convention and save $50 and get the first opportunity for small group training sessions and career center appointments. Master Coaches will be presenting 3 sessions, so sign up today. Stay on Facebook Live after our host closes our show and join our Master Coaches Buzz Reaction for an opportunity to hear and engage in the most recent talks. Let's go to our host, John Foreman, who will update us on his Coaching Conversations podcast series. John?
Thanks, Ruth. Yeah, coming up on Sunday's release, episode 3 of the podcast will feature Miguel Rivera, Spanish coach who was actually on the very first coaching conversation back in March. He and I are talking about both being an assistant coach and also overseeing assistant coaches, as he coaches a professional team in Spain and also as an assistant coach with the Spanish men's national team. So that should be really interesting.